Good morning. And should I say happy birthday, Bill?
Oh, thank you, Mark. As you said before, my phone is ringing and it obviously turned off to do our first podcast today. But it's interesting, Mark. Today we're out at the Federal Mills in North Geelong. And over the years, this has had a transformation, and many, I guess, up-and-coming businesses have made a start here and moved on to bigger and better things. And the whole area is being revived, and it'll be interesting to see where it sits in another 10 years. But it's businesses are looking to come to Geelong, and as we know through a couple of our contacts, there aren't enough what we call medium-sized to larger factories for manufacturing to come to Geelong. But this is the other end. This is more what I call the white-collar sector. And the Federal Mills, for those that don't know it, if you're coming through Geelong, go and have a look. It really is a great restoration, and the owners of this building have bought some other buildings around Geelong, and they're doing a wonderful job in developing them into for-purpose buildings.
I remember when this place was pretty well derelict. I remember coming to a charity function here that was held in one of the warehouses.
That's right.
And it was a great event, but it was in this derelict place. Anyway, it's a great space. So, today's guest, Bill, before you ask.
Oh, sorry, Mark. Who is today's guest?
Today's guest is somebody that I attended a function in Geelong West called Real Deal. And Emilie Flynn, who's opposite. Hello, Emilie.
Hello, Mark. Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Emilie.
Was one of the conveners of the Real Deal process. And I sat in the front row because I just happened to get there and get into the front row. And I was so impressed. I thought at some stage we need to interview Emilie. And Emilie and I have had a bit of a catch-up, and she's got a great story. So Emilie works for Geelong Sustainability, and you've just had a role change, and we'll come to that. So welcome, Emilie.
Thanks, Mark. Good to be here.
So our usual quest is, where did you go to primary school?
I grew up on the other side of the country in Perth, Western Australia. So I went to a school called Willetton Primary School, and we had bright orange uniforms, and I couldn't wear orange for a number of years.
What colour is that jumper you're wearing today?
And I'm now wearing a bright orange jumper. I've only been able to wear the colour again in the last few years. The trauma has gone, and I'm back to orange.
Oh, I love it. And so what did your family do that had you in Perth?
My dad worked in oil and gas, which might seem a little bit at odds with what I'm doing now, which is quite funny. And my mum ended up studying nursing and then going on to be a diabetes educator.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they separated when I was quite young and both remarried. So I've got two younger brothers as well.
Excellent. And Perth's such a great place to live.
It is.
So after primary school, secondary college was where?
Yeah, so I went to, first of all, I went to a school in Fremantle called John Curtin College of the Arts to study drama because I was a drama queen as a teenager. And then the commute just got a little bit too long. So when it got to year 11 and 12, I decided to come back to Willetton because their academic programs were state of the art, really, really good. And I wanted to use that to, get good grades and get into university and study, and I wasn't quite on the becoming an actor path anymore.
Well, Perth is the town for aspiring actors, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's got WAPA.
Yeah, that's right.
Western Australian Performing Arts Academy. I have a few friends that went on to study there after John Curtin. So.
Yeah. And whilst at high school, did you have any long-term ambitions in your mind, or did you have what were your passions in those days?
Yeah, well, after I decided that I wasn't going to be an actor, the first one was obviously to be famous.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, I asked my mum whether I should be a singer or an actor, and I was tone deaf at the time, and she goes, "Oh, actor, definitely actor." But from the time when I was about 12, I decided that I wanted to be a teacher, and I landed on it, and I never thought about anything else. I never looked outside of that goal, and so I was just very single-minded about that until I went to university, started teaching, and went, "Ooh, this isn't for me, actually."
That's really interesting because a number of my friends did the same. We headed off when we finished high school into uni to do teaching. and my kids hate this, but when I went to do a teaching degree, we were paid to go to university because there was a shortage of teachers. So I think I got the princely sum of $60 a week, and this was in the late 70s. But a lot went into teaching and then went no, and I was one of those. I got through the degree and then thought, I don't know if this is for me, and I ended up going and joining Target, and that was my career. So it's interesting how you have these ideas and then they change. So,
well, Mark, I also know that Emilie was later on was a substitute teacher at some stage, says Bill reading from his the LinkedIn profile. But whilst you were studying, even at school, did you have a part-time job?
Yeah, I worked in hospitality for a really long time.
Yeah.
Hospitality and a little bit of retail as well. So worked behind the bar quite a lot. I was worked in Perth. I was at a jazz club. So, I was on the door and I would say, hello, welcome, take your tickets, take you to your seat, that kind of thing. That's really fun. And I actually did just under a year in Canada as well. I lived in Whistler for 6 months and then Calgary for 6 months. And while I was there, I was also assistant manager at a hair salon. So I did have a few. I
did note that on your profile.
Yeah, that was very different.
So having come out of high school, what was the next step in your education?
Yeah, so came out of high school. I've actually been to 3 different universities, but I've only got 1 degree to show for it. So I started out at the University of UWA, to study. I just started doing an arts degree. I did 6 months of that, and then I switched to do a couple of weeks of marine science, decided that wasn't for me.
There's a contrast there.
I've tried a few things, I've dabbled. And then I went to Curtin University to study teaching, and then I think about 6 months or a year into that, I went, I want to go to Europe. So I turned 21 and then jetted off to Europe and backpacked for 6 months, and then lived in Canada. And then I decided, okay, it's time to finish my teaching degree. So I went to Victoria University.
So you moved over to Victoria?
So from Canada I moved to Melbourne.
Yep.
And the reason I went to Victoria University is because it was, I think, one of the only ones in the country that allowed you to study primary and secondary teaching all in one, whereas before I'd just been studying secondary with a major in maths. And so I went to VU, and luckily all of my units that I'd done at UWA and Curtin were transferable, so I only had to be there for another 2 years. And then I was, qualified to be a primary and secondary school teacher. So when I went on to do substitute teaching, I've actually taught every single year level from prep to year 12.
That's a challenge in today's environment, of course.
Yeah.
It's not an easy task.
No.
So what was your first real job? Paid, you got to pay into your bank account.
I'm trying to remember if it was the cafe or Video Easy.
Video Easy, there we go.
I worked at Video Easy when I was in high school, so I was 13 or 14. The cafe job was Sundays from, say, 6 a.m. till midday. I think that was my 1 shift a week, and then Video Easy was a couple of nights a week.
So with your teaching degree then, and you finished, did you teach?
Yep, so I taught for a year and a half, mostly substitute teaching. I had 1 term of full-time where I had my own classes, but the rest was all substitute teaching. And while I was doing that, I was also running holiday programs in between. And I think, like you're saying, Mark, teaching's just such an interesting one. 50% dropout rate in the first 5 years. And obviously both of us were in those statistics, but it's just, I look at my friends who are teachers and they can just do it with such ease. But for me, I think because I'm such a perfectionist sometimes, I would be teaching these kids and I'd go, no, you're doing it wrong, just give it to me, just let me do it. And so I think you've just got to have such a patient countenance to be able to do that and to kind of let people go out and make their own mistakes. And I found that really challenging.
I have full admiration for friends that are teachers, and it's a tough gig. It's evolved into be far more than just teaching,
Well, you know,
100%.
I'm tempted to talk about in my day, but I have enough sense to know that it's a different world we live in now, and that discipline. And because I went to a religious boarding school as a youngster, and you might say they were slightly tough days, but never mind.
Well, I did spend 2 years at a boarding school where they used to wheel out the cane. I mean, all that stuff. That's like, it's interesting how the world's changed.
All right,
Probably for
so
the better.
Moving on, I guess we're talking to you now in Geelong, of course, and I noticed that you also finished off at Deakin University. What brought... Is that on your resume? Did I read the wrong one, or was that...
I don't think it is because I haven't been to Deakin, but...
Well, I'll give you a degree from Deakin today if you like. An honorary degree, if you'd like.
Thank you.
Right, I did lecture at Vic Uni at one stage, so I'm sure I could sign something for you.
Perfect.
So let's jump into what brought you to Geelong.
So when I was teaching substitute teachers, obviously it's a casual kind of role. You just called in when you needed. And COVID hit, which meant that I wasn't needed. And so I was living in Melbourne at the time, in one of the first suburbs to go into lockdown when it was, done postcode by postcode, if you can remember. I know that it's traumatic to think back to when that all went down. But I was in Brunswick West, which was one of the first ones. And so I just found myself without a job on, I think it was JobKeeper, it was called at the time. Not in a very good headspace, obviously. And I had just gotten into a new relationship a couple of months before COVID as well with someone who lived in Geelong. And so it just kind of made sense once I didn't have a job and didn't really have anything keeping me there to come down here. And so I was one of the COVID moves. Apologies, everyone. October 2020, I moved to Geelong. I think this is such a common sentiment for blow-ins, but I just fell in love with the place. Like, it's
not hard to
beautiful.
do. It's not hard to do. But Mark and I, every time we do a podcast, we talk about tipping points and sliding doors. So COVID was your tipping point.
Yeah.
Right? It sent you in a direction you weren't aiming for, or you probably didn't ever expect, and here you are.
Yeah, I never expected to live in Geelong.
And it's interesting, yes, because COVID did change a lot of lives. My son was locked up in Melbourne for the 2 years of COVID, and the first thing he did when he could escape was move down and say, "Can I stay with you a couple of weeks?" 2 years later. Anyway, so what roles did you pick up in Geelong?
Yeah, so I actually started out doing something, again, completely different. I'm not sure if you're noticing a theme here, but I was manager at a co-working space in Torquay. It was a new co-working space. They had spaces already in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, but they were setting up a new one down at Torquay, and they hired me to run it. So I did that for about a year, and that was just something completely different, kind of a little bit more corporate than what I was used to.
Lots of small businesses using it?
Yeah, lots of small businesses, lots of learning curves along the way. I think that they found that, Torquay was just so different from Melbourne that, there were a lot of learning experiences.
There's been a few startups for co-working space in Geelong. Not many of them seem to survive, but I know that I've been to some of the big ones in Melbourne, and boy, has there been investment in those.
Yeah.
So overall, do you think co-working spaces, well, I guess they do have a purpose, but what's the benefit of a sort of a sole operator, a small business owner, of using a co-working space?
I think it's the networking opportunity, and I think it's twofold. The networking opportunity, so the people that you get to meet when you work in these kinds of spaces, like, it's essentially free networking. You don't feel so lonely as well. And for people who struggle to work from home, I think there's just such a huge benefit. A lot of people, I'm not one of them. I'm very lucky that I can work from home and quite happily get all my work done. But a lot of people just really struggle to kind of keep themselves on track and focused. So coming into a more office environment really helps them.
Yeah, because Mark, I'm not one that can work in a co-working space. I know that.
Yeah, look, the one that springs to me, there's one down at Queenscliff, down on the wharf down there.
Oh yes, I've seen that.
And
one,
that's
yes.
a really well set up and seems really well used. So anyway, there's a space for it. Yeah. So out of that, then where to?
Out of that, my friend sent me a post on Instagram from Geelong Sustainability saying that they were hiring, and I went, "Ooh, I'm very sustainable minded. Maybe I could do that." So I applied for that and got it. It was a 3-day-a-week administration officer role, which after a couple of months I got bumped up to full-time, which was awesome. And so that was working specifically. It was the biggest number of staff that Geelong Sustainability had ever had. So they hired 5 staff all at once because they were awarded 2 large government grants for 2 big programs. So the Community Power Hub program and the Small Business Energy Saver program. And so I was working on both. And it was, again, my first role like that, but I've always been so passionate about sustainability, and I suppose that we didn't really talk about that, but that's been a really big theme kind of through everything that I've ever done. And yeah, when the role popped up, I just went, oh my God, I have to have that.
Actually, what it says to me is that you're willing to have a go, but you're also adaptable and a quick learner, and obviously have something that employers say, you're the right fit for this, regardless of what sort of background you have. It all obviously comes together for people to want to give you a go.
Flexibility comes to my mind.
Yeah, flexibility, and you're very personable, and I think that adds to that desire to have you. So let me just go back a little bit. I said at the beginning, the real deal. How did you get involved in that? Where did that come from?
Yeah, through Geelong Sustainability. So it's a bit of a roundabout way that the real deal came to be, but it started as it's a project of Sydney University, but it's still very much a place-based project. So Geelong Sustainability was approached back in April 2022 to come to a meeting with, a range of different community organisations, faith groups and unions to talk about where we wanted Geelong to be, and how we wanted to adapt to all of the crises that we're seeing, but particularly the climate crisis. So we attended that meeting, and there was a really good energy in the room. And so it is essentially, it's an alliance, right? It's, they call it civil society, right?
Yep.
Coming together to advocate for what we need, because we are stronger as a collective. Geelong Sustainability has a strong voice. We have a lot of followers, a lot of people that watch what we do, but when we join up with unions and churches, and we just reach this whole audience that we never would have before. And we also get to learn about these issues in the community that we wouldn't have necessarily known about. Particularly, one of the organisations involved in Real Deal, which actually through the involvement I've now become treasurer on their board, which is Cloverdale Community Centre.
They do great work.
They do fantastic work, and the issues that are brought to Geelong Sustainability from our community are so different to the issues brought to Cloverdale, and so we've learnt from each other about what else is out there and what else we need to be addressing. And
the session at Geelong West Town Hall, Old Town Hall, that was very much a huge mix of different organisations. It was quite impressive, just from church groups to union groups to just people who were interested. It was really, and the push was on about housing more so than anything, which we all know is a massive issue in Geelong, as you can attest in just moving rental properties.
Yep, sure can.
And there doesn't seem to be an answer. It's all very well to say we're going to build X number of houses, but it's a struggle. It's a massive struggle just to get things happening. And an acquaintance of mine who runs a housing estate, their land sales have dropped right off the cliff. So people aren't buying to then build the house. And then if you do get the land, trying to get the title on it and then find a builder, you can talk 2 or 3 years before you get there. So it's a horrific problem. And then rental, again, the reason I know Cloverdale is I sit on Benefit Geelong, and we gave Cloverdale a grant, for want of a better term, or donation, and I think it went to pottery wheels in their pottery classes. And then we've just handed one to they're going to hate me because I can't remember the name, but that was the North North Geelong Housing Cooperative, I think it is.
Oh, yeah.
And again, they manage houses in a cooperative sense, but they've got a huge waiting list of people looking for houses, and the people that are in the houses are so thankful they're in these well-managed houses, but they couldn't survive if they weren't. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, Mark.
And you led that session at the front. Did you get to meet the planning minister and all the rest? Did that all happen?
It did. The Real Deal was present at that meeting.
The housing minister,
with Minister Kilkenny. I was away at the time, so I couldn't attend. But yeah.
But Mark, this is the whole issue around everything we come across and the people we meet through our podcast and some of the private consulting work we're doing in the private business area, is that we are in difficult times, and I'm of the firm belief, and I've lived through some difficult times, let me tell you, but I'm of firm belief that there's no short-term answer to any of this, and because I'm connected so heavily into the private business world, is that people are really suffering. Not only is it, we talk about sustainability and housing and food banks, and I have been a volunteer at Geelong Food Relief Centre. I know from history, and I know that history will tell you that things go in cycles, and we are in a cycle, but the problem is we're at the bottom of the cycle, and the difficulty is it's survival now until it turns, and it will turn.
It will turn.
But it doesn't mean that we should ever give up on what people are passionate about and what we're doing. And it's all of the key words, resilience and all those sorts of words come into it, and we've just got to keep at it. Yep. And Emily, that sounds like what you're doing, is you have a passion and you will follow through on that passion, but my advice is don't expect a short-term result. It is definitely a long-term result.
So tell us about your role at Geelong Sustainability. You've just changed roles, I see. So what are you doing now with them?
So I started out as the administration officer for those two projects that I was talking about before, and then when those two projects were unfortunately they didn't continue them from state government funding level. So that's when Geelong Sustainability kind of were able to move from a volunteer-led organisation where they would only have paid staff on for specific projects. They were able to move into a paid staff model. So our CEO, Dan Cowdell, started kind of, I think, early 2022, and then mid-2022 I came on as executive assistant, and I was in that role up until a couple of weeks ago, and now I am operations and project coordinator. So.
And what projects are you coordinating then?
We've got so many projects on the go at once. So there's a couple of large projects which are a little bit outside of what I coordinate. So we've got the Electric Homes program, which we're running for a second year in a row, which is where we facilitate community information sessions and also a community purchasing program around moving from gas to electric. So solar battery, heat pump hot water systems, reverse cycle air conditioning, as well as draft proofing and insulation. And I think energy audits this time around as well. So that's one of our major projects.
So just picking up on that then, so do you facilitate someone going to somebody's house and doing a look and saying, well, if you sealed that and you did that, and is that part of the... Yeah,
that's part of the energy audit. So we didn't actually include that in last year's program, but it is part of this program, which is awesome because a lot of the time people look at their homes and they go straight to the big ticket items. They go, right, if I put solar on my roof, everything will be dandy. But it's not necessarily the case, right? If you seal the gaps, if you put the insulation in first, that's actually going to save you so much on your energy bills and improve the comfort of your home and for a lot lower cost, I think, than those bigger ticket items. But yeah, so that is part of the program.
And is it a free service or is it a paid service?
It's not. So the way that it kind of works is that we've connected in with local suppliers. So we've essentially done the groundwork for people where it's really difficult. You know, if you're looking to completely retrofit your home, where do you start? You know, you've got to find someone for draft proofing, for insulation, for the solar, for this, for that, and you've got to make sure that they are a reputable supplier. You probably want them to be local. You want to see what their reviews are like. You want to be able to cost compare. Is this what I should be paying? Are they trying to rip me off? So we've done the bulk of that hard work for people so that we can deliver it in a package that makes sense and is easy to understand.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Mark, I couldn't tell you how many. You know those door sausages
Yep.
full of sand? Right? Over the
Door
years,
snakes.
door snakes.
Yeah.
I've used them because there's so much draft comes in under a door that's not sealed.
100%.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I know exactly what. But
Actually, when I was at Fags, we used to sell hundreds of them.
we interviewed a builder friend of ours for our podcast, and his claim to, well, not a claim to fame, one of his building philosophies is that in our houses you shouldn't need air conditioning if you design it correctly.
Yep.
And I remember somebody who bought a house that he built in Torquay, and they went to sell it, and the estate agent said to them, "Oh, you haven't got air conditioning. It will be difficult to sell." I went and spoke to our mate Russell, the builder, and he said, "No, it doesn't need it. That's the way we built it."
Yeah, 100. And I
Yeah.
get really passionate about this stuff. I get really nerdy about it because I've only learned about this stuff in the last couple of years while I've been at Geelong Sustainability, right? I didn't know a bulk of this. And so one of the other programs that we run yearly is Sustainable House Day, which you might have heard of. So that's where we have like roughly eight exemplar homes around the region that have been built or retrofitted sustainably that people can come and have a look at, ask questions. There's experts there. You know, the homeowners can talk people through what they did and how to do it right. And yeah, it's a really great program. Again, that's not one of mine that I'm running, but it's a really good program. And there's some stats out there that'll absolutely kill you. So I think it's around 85% of Victorian homes don't meet the World Health Organization standard of being a minimum of 18 degrees in winter. 85%.
Well, in my little...
That's a big stat, isn't it?
It's a big stat.
In my new ceramic heater I bought last week, because we've just moved house, I noticed this morning when I got up, it records the temperature. It was 15 degrees.
Yep.
Right? Now, last week in that really cold session, it was actually 8 degrees.
Yeah, wow.
And that's inside the house. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all right.
Interesting. So where to next? So, I mean, obviously, not just Geelong Sustainability, but I think you're throwing your hat in the ring for a council role in the City of Geelong in the current elections. So what's led you to that decision?
Yeah, so I've been, like I said before, I've been sustainable my whole life. I've been very green, very kind of eco-conscious, eco-friendly my whole life. And I've also been very political because I don't think that you can have one without the other. It's like all of these things that we've been talking about, you know, climate, housing, cost of living, politics. To me, they're all the same thing. You know, you can't have one without the other. You can't have climate justice without housing justice as well. And so it was one of those things where, you know, when you're younger, you think, oh, our leaders are probably doing the right thing by us. They've probably got this. It's fine. And then you start to kind of look at it a little bit more closely and you go, well, that's not right. I think that, that could be done better. Oh, what's going on here? And then you look around and you go, okay, someone needs to step up and do something. Someone needs to challenge the status quo and change things. And then you go, oh, no one else is doing it.
Well,
that's me.
you use the word challenge, and if you're successful in your endeavours to get on council, you've got all these other people sitting around the table with other ideas.
Exactly.
And that will be the challenge.
And that's democracy.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So good luck with that anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, good luck, because it's nice to see younger faces throwing their hat into the ring and having a go. And instead of standing on the outside like me complaining, wanting to put and have a go at it. So that'll be really interesting. So good luck with it. I'm sure it'll be great.
Thank you.
How do we get in touch with Geelong Sustainability?
Through our website, which is geelongsustainability.org.au. There is our main email address and phone number, which both come to me,
Okay.
which is info@geelongsustainability.org.au and 1300 133 702. Double check that. I think that's what it is.
No, that's cool. The website is where people should probably go in the first place.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's right.
Website.
Yeah,
That's
good. And just quickly, last question. What do you do outside of your normal day-to-day activity? What are your hobbies?
Hobbies. Yeah. Where do I even start? So I am into sports. I used to play footy and cricket and netball. I can't play any of those, unfortunately, anymore because my knees don't like it. I actually had knee surgery after a bad fall playing footy when I was 25. Tore my MCL. So now I play beach volleyball because the sand is much better on the joints.
A softer landing.
Softer landing.
Much softer landing. You can dive and you'll be fine. I also, for the last year and a half, I haven't had a car, so I ride my e-bike around. That might be changing soon. I'm not too sure yet because it's very difficult to get around Geelong with just a bike, and that's actually one thing that I would like to push for better bike lanes.
Okay, yep.
Just because I would love to live in a city where I don't need to own a car. I think that it can be, expensive and kind of weigh you down in a way. So I've really enjoyed having a bike and just the feeling of riding downhill, even when it's cold, and feeling the wind whipping through your hair. It's just, there's nothing like it for the endorphins.
Well, yes, I can relate to that on the Barwon River at 7 o'clock in the morning in the winter, rowing. And you can't go any faster, I can tell you that.
Right. Emilie, thank you.
Thanks,
it's been
Mark.
great
Thanks,
to get
Phil.
to know you better. Good luck with your role here at Geelong Sustainability, and good luck with your nomination for council.
Thanks very much.
Yes, good luck, Emily. Lovely to meet you.
Thanks for having me, guys.